for smoke up in the sky. Pretty soon you'll learn to fly. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where I'm gonna go when the volcano blows. You might go quickly say to me, Mom, you better watch your feet. Lava come down soft and hot. You're loving me now or loving me not. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where I'm gonna go when the volcano comes. Oh, no time to count for what it's worth. 'Cause I just left this planet Earth. Where I go, I hope there's rum. I know there's gonna be a lot on the island tomorrow. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where I'm gonna go when the volcano blows. Lord, I don't wanna land in New York City. I wanna land in no Mexico. Don't wanna land in no 3 Mile Island. Don't wanna see my skin glow. Don't wanna land in Comanche, Skyport, or in Nashville, Tennessee. Don't wanna land in no San Juan Airport or the Yukon Territory. Don't wanna land in no San Diego. Don't wanna land in no Buzzards Bay. Don't wanna land in no Iota. I got nothing more to say. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where I'm gonna go when the volcano blows. No, 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 no. All right, hey everybody, happy Thursday evening. It's Wes Seiler here with Preserve Navarre Live, and I've got Sarah and Samuel Lower in the building. Hey y'all, how's it
Hi,
going?
everybody.
Yeah, so looks like we got about 6 or 7 people that have joined live so far. I love having a couple people on here. It's the second time I've done it with more than one person, and I love it because it just gives a whole nother dynamic, and we fill it out. So thanks for squishing in there and making it work. But
Absolutely.
no, I'm so excited about this show and talking to you guys because we've got a lot of important stuff to jump in there. This is a live show, so let me know if you can hear us okay. If the sound is coming through, the audio and all that stuff is working. Looks like Chaz is on here. I saw Elizabeth Kurz is on here. Yeah, looks like we're up to about 9 or 10 folks now. Liz says, hi, excited to see y'all on. And then Chaz says, hi, Samuel. Hi, Sarah. So that's the most fun thing about this show, y'all, is doing it live. Obviously, we record it and we'll put it out there and everything. But getting a chance to interact with people and get their questions and their hot takes as we go through all the stuff is a lot of fun. So
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've been talking about it a while. I've seen you guys doing presentations and stuff over the Chamber of Commerce. That was incredible. It was wonderful, and obviously we've had a chance to hang out with our families and stuff several times. So this is a show I've been looking forward to for a while. All right, so it looks like the audio's coming through. So the first thing that I do, y'all, is before we kind of get into the meat of the show and everything, I'd love to first give a nod and a thank you to our sponsors. Because as I was showing y'all the stuff that we have here, the lights and everything else in the backdrop and all that stuff, it's thanks to the sponsors that make this a reality, right? That have helped us get to this point.
Of course.
One of those is Elizabeth Kurz, so I know she's watching live. She is just an amazing person, and had her on here a few weeks ago talking about what she does as a coach, right? Mentoring CEOs of businesses and me. I mean, she gave me like a free session on mindset, and for me it was maintaining that positivity as you go through and fight for your business and fight for what you believe in, and it was just so wonderful and so refreshing and new to Navarre. Right. So I love what she does, and I think more and more of Navarre is discovering that, and it's just so needed to get people to just take a second, reflect, and think about
what you're trying to achieve.
You really know the character of somebody by their kids.
Yeah?
And I will say, we met Oscar for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and he immediately beelined for our daughter Charlotte, and has been fantastic. Every time we've seen him, he'll like jump out of the way and say, "Hi, Charlotte! Hi, Charlotte!"
That's
He's
great.
amazing.
Yeah.
And so the quality of that, is definitely from Elizabeth and how they're raising their.
I've had that conversation with her and Chaz and Justine, who I had on last week, and it's just like, it's so nice seeing like professionals, like younger professionals, getting involved in this community and bringing new stuff, and of course their kids, and like having them play. We had a meeting a few weeks ago, and having a bunch of kids over at Yale Brothers run around, chasing each other and stuff was awesome, and it's so nice to see, because so many folks in Navarre, military folks like myself, or they work somewhere else. So seeing people here that are investing in the community like her, it's just, and like I said, bringing something totally new. That I can't think of anybody else who's been through the training that she's been through and is doing that for businesses here. Much like you guys, which we're going to talk about. Another person who's definitely in that category is Chaz. I love Chaz to death. He's on here as well. He keeps me sane, he keeps me focused, and he's trying to get me professional.
And he always has a smile on his face.
He always does. And like, he and I like detox once a week, and I'm just like, I'm trying to figure out some solution to this, or I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this, and he's just like, Wes, now you got to think about that before you send that email. And I'm like, I know. He's like, you need to make sure that your lights are pointed in the right direction, and then you do this, that, and the other. So he's always holding me accountable and upping my game significantly. So he's a huge reason this show happens.
Well, one of the big things that I love about Chaz is he's solution oriented. Doesn't matter what kind of crazy is happening. Yeah. He's like, okay, well, what can we do? Let's do X, Y, and Z. And I just love it.
What a great guy. So.
And he's worked as hard.
In
a good way.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
It's like, wow, it's made our perceptions bigger.
Yeah. And he's got standards that are above like so much of what we're used to when it comes to events and planning and all that stuff. I mean, everywhere he's invested, he's up in their game,
Absolutely.
So I love that. I love seeing him bring that professionalism as well. And then one that's very near and dear to our heart as well is the Veterans Treatment Court. I don't know if y'all know about this. This is Carmen Reynolds.
We have
You heard about it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
We were at the community meeting on Saturday where Carmen spoke about
this.
Good. And so we really got to hear it firsthand from her.
Wonderful.
And it's an amazing program.
It
we're really excited
is.
about it.
So what we're working on now is getting a website for this effort. So going to the meeting, you guys know that Okaloosa County and Escambia, they've got access to all this stuff. Our folks here could get access, but we don't have anything like this in Santa Rosa County. And that's what Carmen is trying to fix, is she really got activated because she was told a while ago, well, there's just not really the need for it here in Santa Rosa County. There's not really enough veterans to justify it. She's like, are you kidding me? We have so many veterans, especially in Navarre, but over this entire county, we need this. And so she's got a website that's coming out. She's got a board that's behind this effort. And really what it is, and you guys know, it is designed to take care of the veterans who are struggling, the ones who are at the absolute bottom of the rope, the ones who can't see a path forward. They're getting in trouble doing something, and it says, okay, here's your path to redemption, and that's what she's doing, is making sure no one gets left behind. And love Carmen to death. She's a huge reason this show is successful. Okay. Oh, and my wife is watching. Hey, there's Kat. She's watching our kids right now.
That's right.
I was jealous because I've had people on here before, and then they're like, their spouses are watching, and I was like, Catherine, you gotta watch and like tell me what I'm doing right and maybe what I'm doing wrong too. But
well, since she's got that extra kid of ours,
I know. She's playing
that's
babysitter
extra special that she's jumped on.
and Chaz and Elizabeth just commented as well. Let me see if I can make these comments a little bit bigger on here. There we go. Come on. But yeah, no, thank y'all for watching this. Thank y'all for participating. This is going to be a great one. The whole point of this show, y'all, it really came out of trying to showcase what Navarre is to people, and especially the parts that they miss. Because everybody knows about the beach. They all know that we have one of the most beautiful natural environments that you'll ever find. But a lot of folks don't know who are the people that make up Navarre. And for a long time, they were just kind of like off the grid, off the map or whatever, and nobody knew, right? But over time, Navarre has just exploded in its growth. And with that comes all kinds of challenges. We're going to talk about that. But I wanted a show where we could just talk about the people that make this place what it is, and the talent that we have. That's the big thing. It's like you drive through Navarre and you may not even know, what's going on here or who lives here, right? You go up to Milton and you see they got, banners and flags and stuff honoring their heroes and things. And with Navarre, you may not know that you've got incredible folks like this. So I wanted a chance to highlight just once a week people that are doing cool things in the community, and especially the legends, right? Over time. We've got NFL football players. We've got military heroes. We've got business owners like Robert Reyes with Stripes, who's got a whole incredible story.
Right.
We've got folks investing in new industries, so that Kevin Lucas in the medical field, and then folks like you guys, right? Like that are bringing new talents, entirely new ways of looking at things versus how it's been done in the past. So it's just perfect. I'm so excited to talk about it. The one thing I wanted to talk about too is the events that we do on the show, because we want to stay connected to those, and that's where people can get together and discuss these type of things. We've got one coming up this Sunday. So this is Sunday afternoon. We're just going to be grilling burgers and hot dogs and whatever else on Navarre Park. We've got some live music. So our friend Captain Bill, he's the guy who did the intro for the show. He's going to be out there playing. But then we've got over a dozen vendors. So
That's awesome.
We've got all these folks who do crafts and artistry and all kinds of cool stuff, resin art and all kinds of woodworking, and you name it. They're going to be out there, and just a chance for everybody to, enjoy this community that we have some fun, and I'll be working the grill. So if you want me to grill something, let me know. I'll have burgers. If you want me to throw a steak on there, I'll be happy to do it. But we just thought it'd be a fun thing to do, and a chance for people to.
We're really excited about this.
Good.
This is part of the reason why we moved to Navarre is for community events like this.
Yeah, the small town feel, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. So that's going to be a lot of fun Sunday afternoon, and our board has been talking about it. I'm like, guys, let's just have a good time, right? Let's just make sure that everybody that comes out there leaves with a smile on their face and enjoys it, and then we'll figure out all the kids go. I wanted to have one of those big bouncy houses, but the county wouldn't let me. So we're going to figure it out. We'll figure out something fun for the kids to do. We'll have some activities and games. So that's an event that's going on. I feel like we need it too, based on the week that we've had. And this kind of is going to set you guys up for what you're going to talk about. But you can't talk about local events in Navarre without talking about this, without talking about like what everyone is talking about, which is the start of hurricane and stormwater and all that stuff, that season of just flooding and seemingly endless rain, and the effect that it has on this community. So it's something we've got to definitely address. And every conversation, over in the military base, we're doing exercises to plan for this, for a Cat 3 or Cat 4 coming through. But it's real for people right now because of what happened, just a few days ago. Right. And it is painful looking at these photos. And talking to you guys and your background, I just want to get your honest reaction. When you first saw these photos, what did y'all think?
What really popped into my mind is there's so much education out there about hurricanes, and there's so much education about tornadoes and things like that, but there isn't a lot of education about flooding.
Right.
There isn't a lot of education about the aftereffects of these storms and how they really do affect the infrastructure and how they affect regular residents on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a hurricane to cause some damage like this, as we saw this week. Right.
Yeah. You look at this stuff, and what do you do when you walk out your front door and that's what you got? What is the answer? It's like you said it very well. It's like if it's a tornado, everybody knows go to the safe place in your house, right? Bury down, make sure the kids are okay. Well, I remember there was lightning striking, and my kids were crying, so we kind of huddled them together, get away from windows and things like that. But what do you do for this? And we've been a victim of it too. We've had our backyard flood right up to the house. Mm-hmm. It's just absolute pain. In this one, the entire street. It's not just your front yard. You can't even leave, your house. You're just waiting, and a lot of times the power's out and all that stuff. Here's one where their yard, is just blocked in. It's very frustrating from a military standpoint, because I think we were talking about that, and a lot of military folks here are they move in and they just got to get a house quick, because they get orders. They have a VA loan, so they throw it down and they say, cool, we got to get a house. I've had folks that, sight unseen because they're coming from Korea, right? Or Europe or whatever, and they're like, hey, we got to have a house, and they're going to training. Military members are going to training as soon as they get there, so they don't have time to, think about it, and we just got to get a house and go. And so a lot of these folks are moving to this area from other places, and they're not familiar with just how bad it is.
Well, I can definitely relate with that as well. Being from a military family, there were a lot of times where we moved to a new place, and my dad went off, and my mom was left with 5 kids trying to figure out what to do with the house.
Exactly.
Who do I call for a handyman? Who do I call when this happens?
Right. Yeah. I was deployed last year in 6.5 months, and my wife's got to hold it all together with kids in the house, and you have something like this happen, and it's just like, what do you do, right? So, pretty wild. The other thing, and I wanted to kind of explain some of this, and maybe y'all can help me or just kind of give me your thoughts. There's also the why is this seemingly getting worse, right? Why is it getting worse? Because there's the concept of, well, you live in Florida, obviously it rains, right? Like, of course, Florida has hurricanes. Any place that's going to be this close to the coast is going to have hurricanes. But there's also and I feel it around the community, listening to people talk, like a thought or an underlining realization that, hey, it seems worse. Like, that wasn't a full hurricane. That was just a storm, that dumped a bunch of water, and it felt like it was a hurricane. People have this, sneaking suspicion that it's getting worse year to year, right? And why is that? And there's a lot of reasons, but I wanted to kind of, give you some information from some of the resources that I pulled out about this. And some of it maybe seemed kind of obvious, but this actually puts percentages behind why we're seeing that with all of the development that we've had. And that's what this shows. So this graph shows, I'm going to walk you through it. It's 4 different stages. You can let me know what you think, but...
Well, let me just interrupt you really quickly.
Yeah, please.
If people could remember 30 years ago, you know, and I only know this because my mom was born on Avery Street in Pensacola.
Okay.
So she knows what it looks like was here 30 years ago.
Oh, gosh, yeah, totally different.
And so whenever we told her we're moving to Navarre, she was like, why? It's a swamp.
Right.
So if you think about it, 30, 40, 50 years ago, Navarre was basically a swamp, and they were trying to give the land away. They were selling the land to GIs who had never seen the land before.
Right.
Selling it to them, and then they show up, and their parcel of land was a piece of swamp.
Yeah.
How did they develop that?
Y'all saw it right next door where I live. Is that that land right next to our neighborhood is just now being developed. Just now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like with all the growth that we've had. Because it was just, people thought it couldn't be done.
Right.
I mean, it was just so, so swampy in terms of how it was, that like the amount of work it's going to take to get this up to speed where someone will buy a house, right, is enormous. And yet now it's profitable enough to do it. When you're selling the homes for over $500,000, all of a sudden it's like, well, okay, right? Like we'll get the dirt.
Incentive.
So they throw a bunch of dirt in there, flatten it, and then now it's a neighborhood. So you're 100% right, is when we're looking at the land that Navarre used to be, it was a lot more like this, right? And like you said, a swampland as well. So plenty of places for that water to go. But I love this breaks it down in terms of the numbers, right? And so you see when there's rain or a hurricane or some type of significant storm, a quarter of that is going into what's called deep infiltration, like deep into the soil, right? And then another 25%, so half of it is a shallow infiltration into the soil. So over half the rain is being absorbed into the ground, right? You do have some runoff, 10% runoff causes some of the damage, and then the rest of it getting evaporated. That's when you have just pure nature. Then, of course, you come across, and this is maybe 30 years ago, 25 years ago in Navarre, you got some dirt roads to neighborhoods, you got the occasional house, and what happens is it cuts off some of that deep infiltration. You go from a quarter to 21%, right? So now you've doubled the runoff if you start to build homes, right? And then you go up from there. Now you've got more of what Navarre has been in the past 20, 10 years, especially where you got homes next to each other, kind of what we're used to seeing in the suburban areas. And now all of a sudden, okay, now it's significantly less. Now you're talking 35% versus 50, and now your runoff has tripled.
Well, and you not only that, but you don't have any vegetation
to soak it up.
To soak it up, you don't have the roots to hold the soil in place.
Exactly.
And so you not only have stormwater issues, runoff issues, but you've got erosion that's happening.
Yes, and then it gets significantly worse once you actually urbanize. And this is what we see. We see hotels going up. Right now on the mainland, even more, we see constant development and less of that. And so now it's just stuff on top of stuff. And now that deep infiltration that used to be a quarter is down to 5%. Now all of a sudden that shallow infiltration is down from 25 to 10. And then look at your runoff. It's gone from 10% to 55.
Right.
Now the majority of the rainwater is becoming runoff. That's what we're seeing. Is people thought that Navarre being unincorporated, that it would never develop and urbanize. Well, reality check, it is, right? Especially in terms of the residential, but commercial too. And now we've got all these kind of problems that you would think would only happen in an incorporated city. Oh no, they're happening here, and they're happening quick. And that's why I think people are seeing it. And then it's further complicated. Sorry, it's a lot of bad news, but it's further complicated by the fact that being so close to the ocean, you've got saltwater intrusion, right? So you got the ocean is right there. There's a lot of, you can see from the graph here on this middle right section of it, saltwater is right there, as well as an aquifer. We have an aquifer in the north end of the county that comes close to Navarre. So you've got an aquifer on one side, and then you've got saltwater as well. So that there's even less room for that soil to be an absorbent. And so where's the water going to go, right? Except in your front yard. And so anyway, that's more of the why this happens. But it's not all doom and gloom here, because there are answers, right? There are answers. We're going to talk about this quite a bit of what are the actual answers, because there's growth everywhere, right, in this country. Like you name the state, there's more people, moving to different places. There's more growth in Florida, especially throughout our state. There's people moving here all the time. But we see different communities doing different things about it. Right. And this is some of the examples of some of that smart growth. So that's why I'm so excited. Like, in addition to just hanging out with y'all, getting a chance to talk to experts in this field who know this stuff. You've been through training. You know exactly what I mean when I say smart growth. And so I'm not an expert on all this stuff. I don't know everything, but getting to learn from you guys is a treat. So, but I do want to take a minute, because I do this with everybody. With everybody. Before we'll come back to this. I want folks to get a chance to get to know you the way that I have and my family has. And I do this for everybody because everyone has such unique stories. So before we get to your expertise, I'd love for people to get to know you guys. And I think y'all sent me some pictures for this, right? So we'll start with you, Samuel. Let me see if I can get these to come up. And, there we go. So talk to me about your story, man. We got a few minutes for this.
Right.
So kind of fill me in. Who are these folks?
So I come from a long lineage of missionaries.
Okay.
As you can see, there's both my granddads. My maternal.
And we can tell from your accent that you're from Lower Alabama.
Yes, right. I've been working on the accent. You can tell.
If you say y'all, you'll start to get it. If you say and then fixing to go, that's the other one. Fixing to go. That means you're preparing to go.
I don't think it sounds right when I do it.
See, you can have mine. I had a Southern accent, and then just with the military and traveling,
right.
It started to be less and less, but I can get you there. So
long line of missionaries. So on the left there is my dad's dad, and they were missionaries in Japan.
Okay.
For many years, 20-30 years, I think.
Yeah.
And that's where my dad was born, and then he went to boarding school in Wales during the thing. And then to the right is my opa, which is my mother's father. He was a BBC engineer.
Okay.
So I don't want to do this anymore because TV was about to come out.
Yeah.
Didn't like the direction it was going, and decided, I'm going to use my skills and for God. And that bottom picture there is Trans World Radio Station in 1977.
Wow.
He helped build that building and set up the broadcasting where they could basically broadcast the gospel both in English and in Spanish to the whole of the South American peninsula. So
incredible.
So fast forward, I come over to America as part of to do Bible college the second year to do church planting is where I thought I was going to be. And anyway, that door closed, but business is my mission field.
Yeah.
But I thought it would be planting churches. But I had the luxury of going to Puerto Rico, which is where my opa, they were there for a year, so I felt like I was harvesting the seeds that they had sowed 30, 40 years ago.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my, I guess my linear, and that's kind of how I came to the country.
I relate to that so much. Yeah. I relate to that so much, Samuel, because my dad was a minister as well, right?
Gotcha.
And he loved to travel. He did a lot of youth ministry, and he was always getting kids to go out the door. He's like, you got to get out. You got to go see the world. You got to see what people live in, right? And then bringing the gospel to them. So we went to Africa, and we went to Eastern Europe many times, all over. But at the same time, and I think he was very disappointed, but I didn't become a minister myself, right? I found my calling in the military, and I got to go to places completely different than where he was going, places like Afghanistan, right? Somalia, places like that. But I felt like I was following Jesus there, because I'm talking to folks in a uniform and just caring about them, especially the folks out there that are innocent civilians, and just loving on them, being a conscience there for the other military members, especially when they struggle. And so it's you can minister in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and I think also as well, when in the church, it kind of you get stuck in that fivefold ministry. You're a pastor, you're a teacher, you're an evangelist. But what if you can still do that? I mean, like for example, Jesus and Paul did all but 2 miracles in the marketplace. Yeah, and those other 2 miracles they did in the church. So. The marketplace is where everyone is. It's community, and so kind of my redirection, I guess, is business and teaming up with Sarah. That's great. I have another business on the side too that I'm hoping to launch next year. Yeah. Once we've been, but it's been a incredible roller coaster, and I've got my grandparents to thank for this really, because they put 2 and 2 together and got me.
Yeah, there you go. And then I got 1 year. So
this is me and my brothers, 3 of us. Every year we'd travel up to the Lake District. Now, I know we live on a small island. You can drive it 7.5 hours. The reality is it's more like a 12-hour drive by American standards, just because the traffic's so dense. So every year my parents would pack us in a VW camper, and we wouldn't even take toilet breaks on the 5-hour journey, because there was a little porty cabin toilet in there. So
just go.
My dad was a legend. He would drive the full 5.5 hours without going to the bathroom, and we'd get there, and that's us.
That's beautiful.
Just hiking, and
that's awesome. My parents used to vacation down here, in Florida. That's kind of how I fell in love with it. But just the beautiful natural environment. But that's awesome, man. Okay, and so then Sarah, for you, I think you sent me a couple as well. Let me bring these up here. There we go. All right.
So as I mentioned before, I am one of 5 children. I'm child number 2. Okay. But I'm the oldest daughter, so you know.
So you're
ruled
in charge.
Roost.
Yeah. Got it.
But as a military kid, my parents were born and raised in Pensacola, and they met when they were 14, sweethearts. And then when they got married, my dad had joined the military. My mom was in the Women's Army Corps. She's a veteran as well. Wow. And my dad ended up in the military for 35 years. And he started off enlisted, was 13 years as an MP, and then was accepted into warrant officer school, and went to flight school and became the first graduating class for UH-60 helicopter pilots.
Wow, that's awesome.
So, he is a legacy of, even though you may be the underdog, you can still do it.
Right.
And that's the legacy that I come from, both from my mom and my dad. So, my mom was actually one of the first women groups to be airborne skydiving without. It was actually completely by accident. Whoa. She was kind of shuffled into this group, and she didn't say no. So she ended up doing a static line jump, and then after that started doing sports parachuting. Just for the fun of it.
That's amazing. Yeah, so there's a lot there. So the warrant officer thing, like those are my favorite folks, right? Like, so I've had a chance to work with every branch and stuff, and the Air Force is just now kind of getting back on that train of warrant officers, but just technical specialists, extremely smart. They just walk into a room and it just changes the entire conversation every time. It's like, oh, there's our expert, this person's got the answer. So that's awesome. And then the skydiving thing, I mean, I don't know if I can say this, but that's badass. Like, that's just cool.
Yeah, your
like,
mum's been, she's 72 this year,
Mm-hmm.
and she's been skydiving up until the last 2 years.
What?
She was an accident. Yeah. So how many jumps has she done?
My mom has over 5,000 jumps.
That's insane.
She's been jumping since 1979. I was born in 78.
Yeah.
So my birth was so traumatic, she felt like she had to jump out of it.
Right.
So next time you're here, I want to see a video.
So,
You
okay,
gotta
yeah,
bring a
for
video of
sure.
that. I
But
wanna
it's
see
a
it.
family tradition. All of us have jumped. All five of us
Have
have
you?
jumped. All of our spouses, well, most of our spouses have all jumped.
I've jumped.
Samuel
twice.
did his
I
2
did,
jumps
yeah.
a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it's just one of those kinds of things, you know, because we come from a military and aircraft family, we know
Yeah.
there's no such thing as perfectly good aircraft.
Uh-huh.
There are always adjustments. You're
Yeah.
always making changes.
Yep, I can attest to that. Yep.
And number 2, you know, I kind of feel like you should always try something at least twice.
Mhm.
So,
Wow, that is incredible.
but this top picture here
Yeah.
is a triple-decker bunk bed. This was whenever we were living in Seoul, Korea. We were in military housing. You know, in the military, they don't think you're going to have 5 kids, but they put you in a house for
Right.
maybe 2.
Yeah.
And so we lived in just over 800 square feet with 5 kids. And this was my parents' solution to having us, all 3 of us girls, live in the same room.
Yeah.
You know, and
That's
and
great.
again, that's that problem solving that I come from. You know, where we may be underdogs, we may have these
Yeah.
certain situations, but we're going to come above it.
Yeah.
And this picture is really important to me because it was what I identify as the beginning of my architecture career.
Okay.
Because we were constantly trying to rearrange our rooms, come up with a certain way. I was
Yeah.
desperately trying to get away from my sisters.
Right. Get your own personal
I
space.
get my own personal space. I think I lived in a
So-
closet twice at one point.
Yeah. I got to tell you, so we had this happen, and I got to be careful how I say this, but when I was overseas, we had our military rooms, and you, like even guys who don't know the first thing typically about interior decorating stuff, you'd be surprised how creative we get, like making curtains and
Yep.
things like that,
Yep.
like getting our own little space and and everything else. And then we had a whole bunch of other folks come out while I was deployed. And so then we like had 6 guys in a room that's typically meant for like 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just got even more creative as like people would like, I mean, I would watch guys in their bunk beds who they'd put the curtain around the bed itself, right? And turn it
Right.
into a room. Like
Right.
the bunk bed now is the room, or they like section it off somehow, like-
Exactly. Well, whenever you live
great.
overseas, I was born in Germany. We
Yeah.
lived in Seoul, Korea for 6 years. You know, whenever you live overseas, you don't always have the ability to live off post like you have in the States.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
so this was us basically doing what we can with what we had.
Yeah.
The bottom picture is my mom and all 5 of us kids. This was Easter in 1990.
Mm-hmm.
That was in the same house, in the just over 800 square foot house. We lived next to a 12-lane highway.
Mm-hmm. And
So
is this you right here?
I'm the far left.
Okay, I was gonna say you look like you love each other. Like I see the love
We
right
kind
there.
of do love each other. So
All
my
right.
older brother Thomas is at the top right.
Got
I'm
it.
at the far left. My next sister Patricia is right next to me. Our baby brother Micah, and then my favorite littlest sister Marion. And as proper military
Yeah.
kids, we're spread all across the United
Yep.
States.
Yep, I believe it. I believe that's how it is with my brother and I. But now you're here. Now you have your own. Yeah.
Yes, now we're here.
Oh, she's beautiful.
And
Yeah.
this is our daughter Charlotte.
Yeah.
She's 4 years old.
Yeah.
She was born a month before COVID shut everything down, and it was the best experience. You know, I hate to say it because a lot of people suffered during COVID. There was a lot of pain. But we just really felt that year of 2020 was an amazing year for us. We had the opportunity to stay home with our daughter. We didn't have to put her
Made
into
the most out of it.
we didn't have to put her into daycare until she was 13 months old. You know, it was just a real blessing for us during that time.
Right, and if I can add that, yeah, the reason we do this, well, it's right there.
Yeah.
We wanted to create a legacy. That's what the LLG stands for, the Lower Legacy Group. This is one of our companies. But yeah, and I was in a career that was great on paper, but I really did enjoy it. I was supporting the trade front desk in New York for stocks and shares and the likes for Credit Suisse, and then of course COVID shut everything down, and I was on a 5-month paternity leave, which was fabulous benefit. fully paid. And so then I quit to look after her, and that's kind of what catapulted our entrepreneur journey. So, yeah, we'd kind of do it for her, and well, you can just see why. It's just blue eyes looking at you. You're like, wow.
She's amazing.
I relate to that so much because I think about, kind of bringing it back to the struggles that Navarre is facing and how it's gotten worse over time. I think about, my kids, my daughter's 8, and what's it going to be like in 10 years? When she's an adult, when she can choose where she lives, right? Is she going to be in a place where she says, hey, Daddy, thank you for raising me in Navarre. I love this place, and I'm always going to have great memories of it. Or is she going to be in a place where, like, oh my gosh, like, falling apart because it's flooding every 5 minutes, and the traffic has just gotten worse and worse and worse, and nobody's done anything. And I struggle a lot because in some ways that's how I grew up. I grew up in Memphis, just outside of it, and I was in an unincorporated place, and then Memphis swallowed it up, and they just kind of took it over because they wanted the tax revenue. And once they did that, the schools went down. They didn't really take care of it because it was just annexed land. And I'll never forget my dad saying, well, there it goes, because they just annexed us. I wish we had been our own town, because then we could have fought against that and had our local government. And so when I kind of fight for Navarre to do the same thing, it's a lot of that. It's like, I want my kids, to be proud of where they come from, be proud of where they live, and and I want to see Navarre prosper for them,
Let's leave this place better than we found it.
Yeah, especially when we know
so
we know the issues that it's facing. So totally relate. I think that's a wonderful story. So that kind of brings us to the business, and this is kind of the meat of it, because and I've heard the presentations on this, and it's just fascinating because I haven't seen any other firms come into Navarre offering what you offer. There's kind of the folks that have been doing it for decades and decades, a lot of them up north, but I haven't seen architects walk through those doors in the Chamber and in Navarre since I've been here, 7-8 years I've been here. So you already kind of talked about it a little bit, but when did y'all form this? And you mentioned some of the vision, but what's the time frame at least?
So you kind of went as sole proprietor 2020, right?
Yeah.
In the
so
fall,
during that same time.
In the fall of 2020, I was getting phone calls from previous clients, previous friends, saying, hey, we need an architect, and we can't find one who has our same vision and our same passion.
Right.
And our first really big client was actually a developer up in North Carolina.
Okay.
And their focus was affordable housing and ministry housing, which is absolutely
I was going to say,
this is like our heartstrings, absolutely. And they're developing houses for women who are aging out of the foster care system. Where do they live whenever they age out? What do they do? How do they survive? How do they learn how to be an adult when they age out of the foster care system and they're no longer being taken care of? And then, of course, people who are also coming out of prison, coming out of having a hard time on their luck or something like that, and they have gone into ministry programs to help them get back on their feet. And they have to work the system, they have to work the programs to be able to graduate to the next level, to be able to live in a halfway house, and then graduate to the next level to be able to have a room of their own in the halfway house. And those kinds of things. And so they're creating ministry housing so that when those people graduate from those programs, they can rent a space that they know they'll be in the community and they'll be supported, and not just kind of kicked out on their own and, hey, fend for yourself now.
Right.
And so, again, that's like our heartstrings, and, community is one of our core values.
Yeah.
And one of the projects that we done that's on our website was multifamily, but, that front porch style southern. Well, it's kind of at the back where the community can kind of meet, and all their sponsors and their.
It's very refreshing. I gotta say, because and I'm sure you picked up on this in our community, and I think there's a lot of places that struggle with this. There is such an antagonistic relationship between the people who are involved in politics, the residents, right? Grassroots style folks, and then the developers, right? Like it's just like this boom, boom, boom of like all these developers who built our homes. We wouldn't be here without them.
Right.
But there's this antagonistic relationship where, it's like, oh, the developers are responsible for all these things. And then developers get frustrated with it. Well, hey, you bought the house, And so there's very little of like sharing the heart, behind development.
Right, and I think that's
and
where
how
we
you are
come
doing
into
it.
it, is we kind of bridge that gap, don't we?
Yeah.
We make
Right.
the living practical, and it's one of your reasons why you came into architecture.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we've had a lot of fun. It's our largest client, but they also do like infill plots, and they brought the small house with ADUs to it, and they're selling. One of them sold for over 300,000, and it's only 800 feet, square feet.
Right.
So, yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah.
So that was late 2020, and so I started basically doing kind of work on the side, but simultaneously, Samuel and I started working for my cousin, who had started a furniture manufacturing company.
Okay.
And so what they were doing was, he needed a designer to design his furniture, and he needed a business manager to run the business. And that's what we are. So we started working with him, and it was a really great opportunity, and it gave us the opportunity to, like I said, I worked part-time for him as a designer, and then I was able to work with our new client and kind of just help design new affordable houses and these ministry houses. And then more work started coming my way, and I had several other people calling me and bringing in, to the point where after about 3 months, I didn't have enough time to work on designing furniture and doing architecture, so I had to choose.
Got it.
And after spending 7 years in school to become an architect, I didn't want to throw that away to design furniture, and so that I knew was my passion. I knew that was my purpose,
7
and so
years, wow.
that's where I basically had to tell my cousin, I'm sorry, I've really enjoyed working with you, but I'm gonna have to focus on architecture at this time.
7 years. I mean, that's like being a doctor. You're saying that.
It is. Like, Jack of all trades.
So,
I don't think people realize what goes into that to be, qualified architect and to really understand.
Right.
So, and then that's when we formed the LLC. LLG Architecture.
And you see the values. I mean, you've kind of articulated, already kind of your story, and it's perfect. How you've written this, because you see it coming out the solution oriented, the problem solving, right? Putting things together in a different way, making it work. The networking, I love that too. You guys are out and about in the community, talking to folks, going to events, really understanding and learning about this community and what it needs.
Well,
it's
I
great.
see buildings as people. Okay, and if you imagine, you think about it, biblically, God made each and every one of us different. We all have a different fingerprint. That's our identity.
Yeah.
That's who we are. That's how we are distinct from each other. And buildings are all different as well. And so just because the team that I brought together for this building might work really great, it doesn't mean that it'll work for your project. And so if we network, if we build that network and understand who's here, who we can bring into the fold more or less, then we can formulate a team at the beginning of the project, so that we make sure that you have the most successful project that you can, because you have the right team. Yeah.
That's just so different than when I hear the stories of how Navarre came to be. I mean, they were just happy to have a Publix, like years ago. They were just like, oh my gosh, we got a Publix. Once they got the bridge, we have a bridge, right? Like, people can actually access it. There's been such a kind of like adolescence to the community, right? Of just like, oh my gosh, we have a thing, right? We have some level of freedom for this community. Intentionality, like an actual process, thought behind what we're doing. I mean, we're just happy to have something. But now we're in this place where, the situation demands some rethinking of how we've been doing things all along. So, starting to kind of bring, and I keep thinking of like Elizabeth and like the way she does her business of like, you gotta look at your subconscious, look at what's behind, and I hear that from people all the time, because they just want to accept what's been given to them. And it's like, take a second and think about that. Like, you can't do that anymore, unless your neighbors are going to continue to flood, and we can all get out there ourselves and everything else and try to work on it. But aren't we missing something? Aren't we missing some of the planning of how this should have been built, that was skipped over? So,
and that's exactly what design does. Design is intentional problem solving. And that's where we're able to really look at the big picture and the macro and the micro, and really identify what it is that would work best moving forward. And that's where, you know, architecture really steps in. A lot of people don't realize that's what the core of architecture is. And I tell this story to a lot of people. Have you ever moved into a home where you have a sink and a dishwasher? You're right-handed. Which side of the dishwasher do you think would be the most efficient for you as a right-handed person?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
All right. So how do you wash dishes? You have to rinse the dish off and put it in the dishwasher.
Yeah.
So if your dishwasher is on the left-hand side, you've got maybe a cloth in this hand, but you're going to hold the dish with your left hand because you're right-handed.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so if it's on the left hand, on the left side, you're constantly putting the dishes in the dishwasher.
I'm laughing because that's just like Justine. Like, she was interior decorating, right?
Yep.
She was just like, okay, it's not just flowery things and pretty stuff, although that's part of it, but it's bringing thought and intentionality and trying to be economical with your space.
Right.
So when you're talking about that, like, that's fascinating.
So you're a busy parent, you've got kids going everywhere and everything like that. You need to be able to fill the dishwasher in 10 minutes.
Right.
But if your dishwasher is on the right side and you're right-handed, then you're switching hands. You're putting whatever cloth down, you're switching the dish over to the other hand and putting it in the dishwasher.
This is why I'm slower at it. That's what I tell Kat. Like, it's not me. It's the fact that it wasn't designed
so you're taking
by an architect.
three times longer to load the dishwasher.
No fault of my
So you're
own.
fired. You're not allowed to wash the dishwasher anymore.
Right. Got to become ambidextrous.
So, but that's what design does. That's just a small example of what design can do in a big picture situation. Because if you're taking, 20 steps instead of 60 steps, you're saving time, you're more efficient, and you're able to get done what you need to get done, rather than being a slave to poor design.
Right. And this is, like I said, this is like the money stuff, because it shows the expertise. This is not an amateur thing or an online program that you can just knock out in a few hours or days. Like, the amount of education you go to be able to help people, in this process is extensive.
Right, and you were at our presentation.
I was,
when we did the ribbon cutting, and I really got to share my heart that the heart of an architect is the health, safety, and welfare of the public, and most architects out there get into architecture because we want to save the world.
Right. Well, it says it right here, planning is essential. The more you plan this out, the more cost effective your project will be.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying is, like, in Navarre, it hasn't been that. It is grown out of necessity, right? Because people come, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't afford to live in Niceville, right? They got a job at the military base. It's just out of my price range. Shalimar, Fort Walton is just insanely expensive, and there's no places to. But then they come to Navarre, and it's just like, hey, I can actually afford this place.
Right.
And so they're buying homes and everything else here because it's affordable. But how much planning went into those, especially given what we've talked about, the difficulties that this community's landscape has, right?
Well, I like to compare Navarre to Orlando, and this is something that a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah.
I at the beginning earlier when we were talking about flooding, I was talking about how Navarre is and was a swamp.
Right.
Well, that was the same with Orlando, and what a lot of people don't realize is Disney came in and bought that land pennies on the dollar. So, and then they just started developing, and they used the money that they saved to do what you call smart planning, smart infrastructure, smart growth. And they did it with planning with experts. They talked to people, and they have turned where Orlando is currently, where it used to be a swamp, they have turned it into a thriving metropolitan.
Right.
Now, that's not necessarily what we want here, because we like our beautiful
Small
beach
town.
However, we still need smart growth, because we don't want to be flooded out of our homes. We don't want to lose our nature. We don't want to lose our trees, and all those things.
Yeah, you see it in Gulf Breeze, again, like right down the street. So, I totally agree with you about Orlando, but we're seeing it all around. Gulf Breeze is getting tens of millions of dollars to be able to go back in and say, hey, at the time that we first built our power lines, we couldn't bury them. That technology really wasn't affordable for us, or didn't really exist like it does now. Now we can, so now let's do it. So now they're going back and doing all this construction, and yet disrupt some of your life, but it's worth it because they know they bury those power lines. Now they're not going to go out during the storm, right? They're doing this with retention ponds and everything else as they're buying out spots of land that's commercial, residential, and saying, okay, let's work with the community and see if we can put in, some type of this home forecloses or whatever, this business shuts down. Cool, let's turn that one into a park where we can also put some of that infrastructure in. So that redevelopment is happening. I mean, there's so many communities Fairhope and Orange Beach and so many others around this area where you see those kind of projects happening, just not here, right? Not really here because there's no one that has the capacity to take that on, and very few people with anything close to what you have in terms of your background education. And I put this picture up because I wanted to start here. There's so much to talk about, and we're going to have to do, like I said, multiple shows with you guys to really flesh this out. But let's just we'll start basic, because I know so many homeowners in Navarre are thinking, what project can I do for my existing home? But let's just say you were building a new home. Let's say that you had come to Navarre, right, in the 80s, 90s, whatever, when some of this development was happening. What would you do? If you were going to build a stormwater safe or resilient home, how would you put it together?
Well, I mean, this is a great example of a project that we did. It's a concept down in Tampa. It is in a major flood zone. And a lot of people don't understand this, but there is sea level rise. And so as the sea level rises, FEMA is changing their flood maps, because every storm that comes through, flooding is increasing.
Oh, sure.
Flooding is getting worse. And so FEMA is changing their flood maps. And the last time they changed it was in 2020. And so this location went from requiring 3 feet above grade to 14 feet above grade.
Okay.
That's the change that happened from FEMA.
Oh, I'm living in it. I mean, like I said, our neighborhood, it was all kind of swampland across the street. Now it's all being developed, and we're like, well, hold on a second. We had flooding during Hurricane Sally. Oh my gosh, how much worse is it going to be for whatever hurricane is coming next, now that there's a neighborhood across the street, and we haven't done anything to get ready for it. So you're right, it changes.
And the biggest key to resilient design is making sure that you plan ahead.
Okay.
You know, you're not just planning for what's going to happen this year.
Right.
And mind you, we have all seen the reports that they're estimating really bad hurricane season this year.
Absolutely.
And so you're not just planning for this year, you're planning 50 years in ahead.
So what are some features of this home, as it's built, and I know you talked about the concept of it, that make it, more resilient?
It's elevated above grade.
Sure.
So they have looked and seen what is the 50-year flood zone, what's the worst case scenario, the 100-year flood, and they've looked at that and they've identified that, okay, because this is the worst case scenario, I am going to build higher than that.
I see.
So the whole finished floor, is above 14 feet above grade. The other thing that this structure is built out is concrete.
Okay.
So and a lot of people don't realize there's an imaginary line in Ocala. South of Ocala, they build out of concrete every day, all day.
Oh, really?
North of Ocala, it's wood construction, which is where we are. It's wood construction, and things like, what happened in Mexico Beach, where everything is just flattened.
Yeah.
It's going to happen more and more up here.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be doomsday. I don't want to be that person that's just negative Nelly, Samuel says.
She's not that way at all. She's very positive.
But that's what's going to happen up here again.
Yeah.
And so making sure that we are building resilient buildings. One of the things that we specialize in is 3D printing construction. And in 3D print construction, it's concrete buildings. And where traditional construction, you're looking at 1,500 PSI for projectiles hitting a wall.
Yeah.
3D printing construction is 4,000 to 6,000 PSI, which is a massive difference. And it's more than what the basic requirements. And that brings me to the other thing that I would do if I was building myself a home here is I would not look at the basic construction requirements.
Yes. That's the challenge.
Because those basic construction requirements are not going to be enough.
Right. That is the problem that I hear from so many folks who work in the construction industry is they look at the land development code and they say, okay, it requires this, tends to be very little. If I put in more, then I'm going to get underbid. Right. And then people are going to go with a cheaper option.
Right.
And then they don't get all the things that I could provide. And so we as residents have to demand that. We have to say, hey, I want more than just the minimum, right? Like, so some of it's on us. I think some of it's on the county government. You know how I feel about incorporation of bringing in more resources to this. But I totally agree with you. Is we have to stop thinking of what's the cheapest home I can get, as opposed to, okay, what is the safest home that I can afford, right?
Exactly.
It may not be as big, but if you can get some of these features and planning to it.
Well, we all know that cheap does not equal quality.
Right, exactly.
And it kind of costs in the long run. So you may saved, but in the long run, you've got to come back to it and repair it.
Yeah,
and whatnot.
That's some of the answers. So I love to.
But like Mexico Beach, the house that was standing is because they went above and beyond.
Yeah,
exactly.
The basic.
Right.
And, they overloaded with the hurricane clips, didn't they?
Yeah.
As far as we know.
Yeah, there's a couple comments on here. I want to go through these, and then we'll talk about this a little bit more as we close out. But Elizabeth said, I always learn something new and more about architecture when I listen to y'all. And it's an education thing. I mean, I totally agree.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Chuck said, y'all are the best. And then Justine said, buy nicer, buy twice. Right. And I think that says it really, really well, because that's what's happening in Gulf Breeze now, is that they're saying they really woke them up with Hurricane Sally, like, oh my gosh, we got some work to do, we got some liabilities here, and then funding became available because the entire world, country, a lot of the world is looking at this area when Hurricane Sally hit. Same thing with Hurricane Michael over in Panama City, and so they're throwing money at the problem, saying, here you go, fix your stuff.
Right.
And then Gulf Breeze is like, cool, we'll take that, and then we're going to do this and that project with it to come back in. And that's what some of this shows, is there are projects that you can do to come back into a home that already exists, right? A lot of us are homeowners now, to go back into them and say, okay, let's come back and let's redevelop this. And like I said, it disrupts your life for a time, but it's worth it. And people do this all the time, whenever they're flipping a home or whatever, is they come in and say, okay, we're going to change this, that, and the other, and then install a drainage system or something like that in your neighborhood.
Right.
And also, like I made out earlier, in the county of Durham in North Carolina, they have rules now that you have to have so many trees on your land. Now that's for them to replace the trees because it's heavily wooded in most of North Carolina.
Right.
Yeah.
But what if we worked with local municipalities to be able to put in a few trees? Yeah, it's frustrating because you don't get what you want on your land per se, but you're thinking of the bigger picture.
Right.
How can this last 50, 100 years,
Right.
And I think that's a great way, a simple way really, that could do it, and I'm sure there's other ways, and I think we can have that influence in time.
Definitely can. The challenge that we have now, because people say all the time, like, why are you so passionate about this incorporation thing? Are you just trying to raise everybody's taxes for no reason? Not at all, right? Not at all. I see what y'all are talking about. I see the potential here to go back in. I know it's going to cost money, right?
Yep.
It's got to come from somewhere originally, but I also know an investment in the city is going to pay off, because now all of a sudden you've got the staff to be able to coordinate these projects, right? We don't have that. We have one county commissioner, right, who's from Holly. He's up there fighting for this area against 4 other guys who are trying to get money for their districts, right? And then he's using the same staff as they are to try to get whatever he can done. I want to see a city staff where they're all focused on Navarre. There's more than just 1 or 2 or 5 of them. There's a whole team of folks, and then they're looking at what money's out there that we qualify for. Right. And that's where I've sat down with project managers and infrastructure staff at Gulf Breeze, and they say, hey, did you know that Gulf Breeze qualifies for this grant and that grant? You wouldn't think it, but we qualified it. We figured out the code did this because of Highway 98 or whatever, and now we're eligible for $20 million that we didn't realize we were. And Navarre could be eligible for all those things and have the staff if it were incorporated. So I'm passionate about it for these reasons, because I'm tired of seeing more and more people struggle and flood when I know that there's answers out there. It's just that they're expensive. They take a lot of effort and work. They take folks like you guys, but y'all got to get hired. I mean, like, this is more than the individual taxpayer can afford to do these big projects in our community. Right. And so being able to bring the people together to say, okay, we're going to make this decision, and we're going to use it to save our community so that it's not underwater every single year.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why we're so passionate about education.
Yeah.
We've been through the education. We're in this industry every day, all day, over and over and over again. And so that's why we are experts in this industry, is because we see it all the time. And so, somebody who is a nurse has a very valuable job and it's very important, but she doesn't understand, or he doesn't understand, construction. they don't understand infrastructure.
That's such a good example.
They don't understand those kinds of things, even though they have a very, very valuable part of the community. But you're not going to go to an architect for medical advice,
right?
But you will go to an architect for construction advice or anything like that. And so that's one of the reasons why we're so passionate about the relationships that we build, is because we are here for mentorship. We are here for education. We are here to be able to help people understand and be that bridge.
And what I hope is that there are developers in this area. They're going to meet you where you're at, right? Because they're not all evil, and I listen to people who tend to demonize them, and I can't believe you have lunch with that guy who's a realtor. I'm like, nice guy, right? They have a way of doing business, and it's worked, to this point. Maybe there's some things that they can learn from you guys and partner with you, and then people start to realize, oh wait, we can work with construction folks, with development folks who have their heart in the right place for this community, and go back and fix some of these things.
Right.
The joy of it will come, I think, when people realize how much money is out there for these projects that they can access without having to put tons and tons. Because that's the big fear, is if you incorporate and they're worried that everything's going to have to come from taxes. When they realize it doesn't have to be that way. There's enough money out there already to come back. And then I'm getting stuff with barely having to put anything more into it.
Right.
That's what I see on the other end that not everybody who's grown up around here sees. But regardless, I'm excited for you guys in this community because, whether incorporation happens or not, there's still very much the need every day to educate, to get involved. And there are certain people who can afford it. And, I hope you guys get to demonstrate, your abilities with them. Right. And I'm looking forward to that. So thank you all so much for being here. I want to go through these comments real quick before we wrap up. I mentioned Justine's comment. Chaz on here, he said, this is dynamic. We need your innovation. Again, I totally agree. We need yours too, Chaz. I appreciate y'all being on here because it's just such a joy to see people bringing this expertise and stuff to this community. John Mark's a friend of mine from the military. He's an Air Force officer. He says, keep up the good work. He lives right down the street. Elizabeth as well. Nancy, this is kind of what I was talking about before. She said the BOCC won't stop the clear cutting to satisfy developers. That needs to change, right? Then we need to look at how we redevelop smarter.
Well, and people only know what they know, right. And so sometimes the developers only know one way of doing things.
That's where Elizabeth comes in, right?
There you go.
She's like, you got to grow. You got to enlarge your perspective.
And that's the conundrum, isn't it? Change is going to happen.
Yeah, whether you like it or not.
Exactly. And if you just keep things as ticking over, you're just creating a mess. And a mess and a mess. But if you embrace it, at least you can plan it.
Yeah.
And iron out the kinks.
It's
and
well
stop
said.
The fires.
Yeah, because there's so many people who think, hey, just don't touch it, leave it as it is. Everything's just fine, right?
Yeah.
Like you must hate it if you're trying to change it. It's like, no, we're actually trying to preserve it because while it's wonderful to have new people here and to see the growth, at the same time, it comes with a lot of liabilities that aren't sustainable if we don't change a few things. It's as simple as a room. The first couple of people come into a room, there's 3 of us in this room right now, it's fine. If 30 people come into this room, we're going to have to change something, and that's Navarre, right? So not a hard concept, but cutting through some of that and showing people, hey, this is what we mean when we say smart growth, right? And y'all have done such a wonderful job for that. So thank y'all much for being here. We're going to have you on again because I know you've got like a whole lot more. I want to see that skydiving video.
Okay.
I would love to see what a 70-year-old lady like skydiving. That's going to be awesome because that tells me that I got to do it now. Like I have no excuses. I'm going to do that. So.
Well, I will just do a little shout out to my sister.
Yeah, go ahead.
So last year she was on a national skydiving team and they won the gold.
Holy smokes. Okay, that too. Okay, so I'm gonna book you before we're done. But thank y'all so much for being here. This is exactly what this show is about: is elevating and showcasing you guys your perspective. So thanks so much for being here, Samuel.
Thank you so
really
much.
Appreciate you, Sarah, as well. Thank y'all so much for watching. I'll mention this one more time. We've got an event this Sunday, 12 to 4. We'll be grilling out. Hope you guys get to make it so people can meet you for themselves and talk about all this stuff. Thank y'all for being here, and then we'll be with you next week for our next show. Y'all have a good night.